Start. Good morning, everybody. I'm Ross Brown. For those of you who haven't attended any of the previous webinars, I'm a Detective Inspector and I'm Head of Cyber and Innovation for the Southwest Cyber Resilience Centre. I'd like to welcome you all to the last in a series of 4 webinars from the SWCRC in collaboration with the National Cyber Security Centre. Don't worry if you haven't caught all of the webinars. They are quite important, but we'll be publishing the entire series on our website in the next couple of days. So you'll be able to catch up there on our website, on the blog page. The webinars have been designed to take you through in a structured and easy to understand way, helping you to use the NCSC products that we provide you as a member of our organisation. So it'll not only help you understand the NCSC tools, but more importantly, it'll help you to implement the guidance and make your business, whatever its size or sector, more cyber resilient. Again, I say, if you haven't joined the SWCRC, please feel free to do so. Core membership is absolutely free. We provide you with a number of NCSC tools, and obviously in conjunction with this series of webinars, it shows you how to apply them to your business and operate online more safely. So this morning's webinar is titled Embedding Online Security and should take about 30 minutes. Christopher has very kindly again joined us from the NCSC and will take us through this morning's webinar. I'll just say that due to the nature of Christopher's work, the presentation this morning will be slides only. There will be an opportunity to ask questions, so please feel free to use the chat function, pop your questions in there, and time permitting, I'll ask those or pose those to Christopher at the end of his presentation. So Chris, once again, I know it's a bit of, as we say, it's a bit of an end of an era, but hopefully a start of a new one maybe. Thanks so much for joining us again, and I'll hand over to you. Thank you, Christopher.
Thank you, Ross, and good morning to everybody on the call. As Ross mentioned, this is the 4th and final webinar in the series. For those who have attended the previous 3, welcome back. For those who are coming to this session new, who haven't attended the others, welcome. Thank you for taking your time to attend this webinar. Don't worry about needing that prior knowledge. This session is very much about recapping those 3 previous sessions and understanding how all these technical controls fit together, how the products we have, the NCSC, work in complement one another to help you embed the security within your organization. The challenge I always have when it comes to these webinars is we have delegates who have vastly different experiences and knowledge of IT and cybersecurity. We have IT professionals who attend, but we also have sole traders and micro businesses who don't quite know how to implement cybersecurity or not quite sure where to start. Hopefully today's session, though, will cater to everybody's experiences and knowledge, and we'll have some key takeaways. For those who haven't attended the previous sessions, just a recap on who we are. The National Cybersecurity Centre was established at the end of 2016 to form the UK's National Technical Authority on cybersecurity. We are that one-stop shop for all products and guidance and services on cybersecurity, governed by that remit of helping to make the UK the safest place to live and work online. We support all parts of the UK, everyone from individuals and families right up to our large organisations, public sector and cybersecurity professionals. We have those services and products in place which help every part of UK society implement and embed strong cybersecurity practices. When we think of cybersecurity, then we need to move away from that misconception of cyber being primarily an IT issue, something that the IT department deal with and it's for their sole responsibility alone. We've come a long way over the last few years, and especially the last 2, 3, 4 decades, where our cyber maturity and security has grown, and that interconnectivity as a society is only growing. Which is why our cybersecurity capability is not only formed by our IT and our technology, but by the people and the processes we have in place within our organization, making sure that we pay due diligence to the staff we have, the correct awareness training, and having the appropriate processes in place to deal with the growing cybersecurity risk, making sure we have those processes for installing and embedding our security controls and the process for responding to a cyber incident. And all this underpins our cyber resilience, that ability to cope with unforeseen incidents, both malicious and accidental. Cybersecurity is now part of that people, processes, and technology remit that we need to pay attention to. And when I speak to business about this can be quite overwhelming, especially for our small and micro organizations, where many individuals will be wearing multiple hats part of that organization. Ultimately, then the question I get asked when I talk about embedding online security is, where do I start? There is so much guidance out there and so much to do. Many organizations feel overwhelmed, don't have the enough time and resource in place to deal with it, and put it to one side, hoping that they aren't the victims of a cyber incident. Now, I've mentioned this on the previous 3. I'm a big advocate of cybersecurity being something we can all do and something we should all be doing. So, implementing cybersecurity controls shouldn't be difficult. Regardless of our knowledge and experience, there are steps we can all take to secure ourselves online, not only in our professional lives and our personal lives as well. This session this morning then is just going to unpack some of the NCSC products and guidance, and depending on where people are within their knowledge, their experience, or where they sit within the organization, I want to demonstrate that we all have a part to play and outline the steps we can all take to keep ourselves safe and secure online. The first control implementation that I want to address is the Cyberware Campaign. Now, this is something I spoke at, bear with me. This is something I spoke at length in the first webinar. So once that recording is online, go back and check it out, but I will mention it here. The Cyberware Campaign is fantastic control because it is 6 behaviors that we can all implement straight away. This isn't just for the IT department to sort out. This is something all staff members and individuals can implement. We're really looking back with the Cyberware Campaign. We're looking at building that baseline of security and control and beginning that behavioral change. I like to think of cybersecurity not just as a box ticking exercise, but something that we build into our habits and our business as usual to shape the way in which we live and work online. And once we have those controls in place, we can then start to move up our controls and our security in the organization. And the tool we have, the NCSC, is the top tips for staff e-learning. The recent cyber breaches survey identified that only a small percentage of businesses actually implements staff training on cybersecurity, whether for time and resource. We just don't see that happening. But we have a free 30-minute training pack which helps individuals and employees identify the risk of their organization. This is something that IT professionals and members of your organization should be pushing out, so staff have a baseline level of understanding when it comes to cybersecurity. And then this is when we move into our SME guidance suite. We have the Small Business and Charity Guide, which I'll talk a bit more afterwards. We have the Response Recovery Guide, which talks about the ways in which we can prepare for a cyber instance. And then we have the Exercise in the Box Toolkit, which allows organizations to test their current cybersecurity posture, understand how they would respond to a cyber incident, and identify where improvements can be made in our cybersecurity. We then have the active cyber defense service at the NCSC, and I'll talk a bit more about this afterwards. But this is now embedding those technical controls at a very organizational level. This is implementing defense mechanisms that can identify a cyber breach and understand the wider network in which we're operating. And finally, we can move towards the Cyber Essentials certification, which means that your cyber defenses and your cybersecurity controls are implemented by that government, my apologies, that government certification, which identifies that you have implemented cybersecurity controls at a very high level. What I want to do then is just spend the next 10-15 minutes walking through these controls and demonstrating how they all fit together and why we need to be taking this layered approach when it comes to our security controls. Now, I've spoken about this in the first webinar. This was the first content. But the Cyberware Campaign, which we relaunched at the end of December, is the 6 behaviors that all individuals should be implementing at whether in our professional lives, but also our personal lives as well. And it's no coincidence that 4 of those 6 behaviors are based on password management and account protection, because these are the areas cyber criminals will go after to try and leverage vulnerabilities in weak passwords and lack of 2-factor authentication, which will give them access into your organization's network and move throughout the network to cause that disruption and damage to the organization. And then we have the update, the importance of updating our devices and make sure we back up our most critical assets and information. And what I love about this is that these steps won't take that long to implement. Make sure that we have a strong set of passwords for our email. It's something we can do on a lunch break. Make sure that we turn on 2-factor authentication. It can take only a few minutes. Doing these controls will only take a small amount of time, but the increase in our cybersecurity is absolutely huge. And just by doing these bare basic controls, we've really mitigated being the victims of a cyber incident, not only in our personal lives, professional lives, but also our personal lives as well. It prevents us being the victims of frauds and scams. And as it says there, 47% of businesses have staff using personal devices for work. So make sure that if you are using a personal device, you are implementing these controls to secure your business working. And this is when we move into the need for cyber awareness training and make sure staff have the correct level of knowledge in place. As is noted there, only 14% of businesses train their staff on cybersecurity. But just by promoting the top tips for staff training pack, which, as I said, takes no more than 30 minutes to complete, this gives staff members a good grounding in the key cybersecurity controls and how to prevent attacks from happening. As it says there, topics include defending ourselves against phishing attacks, the importance of using strong passwords, how to secure our devices, and most importantly, reporting an incident. What we find is that when an individual or organization is hit by a malicious activity or a cyber attack, colleagues aren't quick to report it. They try and deal with it by themselves. They try and keep it contained for as long as possible for fear of repercussions. But we really need to build that culture now where if a colleague or an individual identifies suspicious activity, that they feel confident enough to call it out and they know how to report that incident. We shouldn't be penalizing staff members for potentially clicking on a malicious link or downloading a suspicious file. Mistakes happen. We're all human, and I like to think that cybersecurity is first and foremost a people problem. So make sure we have that baseline understanding across our organization on how to spot suspicious activity and defend ourselves online. And then we move into the small business guide. Now, what is called a small business guide? These are controls that we can all be implementing. And if we look at these follow very much on from the Cyberware campaign. We're seeing those same controls, the importance of backing up data, how we protect ourselves from malware, making sure we keep our devices safe. This is about making sure that we patch and update our devices as the software is improved. Cyber criminals will leverage out of date software and devices where vulnerabilities have been found. And this is something we all experience when we're on our phones, our devices. That pop-up says update now, update later. It's very easy to put off updating our devices. We're busy, we're trying to get something done, but make sure you update your devices as soon as possible. This is a great, quick, easy and free way to prevent ourselves from being the victims of cyber attacks. And again, we're seeing there the importance of using passwords to protect our data. Make sure that we're not using weak passwords. Password 1, Spring 21. Cyber criminals can crack these very easily, and these are dangerous passwords to be using to protect our most important data. And again, there, how do we avoid phishing attacks? Because the vast majority of cyber breaches are a result of suspicious emails and phishing attacks. And again, this comes down to having the correct staff awareness in place and being able to identify malicious emails and suspicious activity. But there's no such thing as the perfect security. Even with the best security in the world, cyber criminals and threat actors will penetrate our firewalls and our networks, giving enough time and resource, which is why we need to be one step ahead. We need to be able to know how to respond and recover if and when we are the victims of a cyber breach. This is about having an incident management plan in place where we know who to contact, what to do, and how to recover from a cyber incident. And what I love about the response recovery guide is that it walks you through that process, starting from planning for a cyber incident, how to identify what's happening, how to resolve and report that incident, and then what do we learn from that? How can we use that experience to better improve our cybersecurity posture? As we've identified, as it was reported in the cybersecurity breaches survey, only 31% of businesses actually have a business continuity plan that mentions cybersecurity. Make sure that within your organization you have cybersecurity and the cyber risk listed in your business continuity plan. And when we talk about cyber incidents, this doesn't necessarily need to be malicious. We're not necessarily talking about cyber attacks here, but also accidental cyber incidents as well. What happens in the event of a power cut, a flooding, a fire? These all impact on our network and potentially disrupt our organization. Just consider how long you may be able to work without your IT and network. We know that many cyber incidents can last days, weeks, potentially months. So we need to have that response recovery mechanism in place should the inevitable happen. And we need to test this as well. A plan is only as good as its testing, which is why we have the exercise in the box, which has a suite of tabletop and simulation exercises, which walk organizations and employees through the various cybersecurity incidents, whether this be phishing, ransomware, malicious software. We're able to understand our cybersecurity posture by running the exercise, identify where improvements need to be made, and then rerun the exercise at a later date to see how our cybersecurity posture has improved. So you don't necessarily have to have that incident plan in place. You can run the exercise, identify where you currently sit within your cybersecurity, and then build that incident plan. The exercise in the box really complements the response recovery guide. You can use both guidance and products at the same time. And then part of that model, we move into the active cyber defense suite of services. And this is where we start implementing real IT technical controls. As it says there, the active cyber defense program what is a free, at the point of use, tool and services that protect against a range of cybersecurity threats. These are free tools that can be downloaded and installed, which will greatly improve your cybersecurity posture. Now, while there's a huge suite of services available to organizations, for the private sector, the most valuable product we have in the ACD service suite is Logging Made Easy. Now, Logging Made Easy suite is, as it says there, is for organizations that do not have a basic level of logging capability. And when we're talking about logging, this is where we are capturing the activity that is taking place on our network at a very granular level. It's important that we are logging the activity that is taking place within our network to identify any suspicious activity that might be taking place, understand which devices may be out of date and where we need to make improvements. And by installing Logging Made Easy, a lot of this work is done for you. Logging can be an expensive endeavor, but with this free at point use service, we can really understand our devices and what software it needs to be patched. We can see where administrative commands are being run on devices, and we can see who is using what machine, and we can query for the presence of an attacker in the form of their tools, techniques, and procedures. And it's important then that we are logging this activity, because we can straight away identify suspicious activity which is taking place on the network. It does take time to implement the LME service, but on the NCSC website we have fantastic tutorials and manuals which walk you through that installation process and get you up to running. This is something that can be used for micro organizations where they can have a basic level of understanding as to what is happening on their network. And finally, we have the Cyber Essentials certification. Once you have that level of security within your organization, you can then look to be certified against the government-backed scheme. And this is that rubber stamp to demonstrate to your supply chain, your customers, that you understand your cybersecurity posture and you are protected against a whole range of the most common cyber attacks. And the technical controls there are very similar to those that we've seen in this Cyberware campaign and the small business guide about using firewalls to secure our internet connection, make sure that we have the most secure settings on our device and software, controlling the access to data and services, protection from viruses and other malware, and again, keeping our devices and software up to date. 5 core controls that we can implement as we move up that journey into better security. I'm a big fan of the Cyber Essentials certification for the benefits it brings to organizations. There's that reassurance to customers that you're working to secure IT, that attraction of new business, that clear picture of your organization's cybersecurity level. It's often difficult for organizations to get a grasp on their cybersecurity posture and their landscape and understanding their network and infrastructure. Cyber Essentials really allows you to take stock of your cybersecurity and what you have on your network. And as it says there, some government contracts do require Cyber Essentials, and we see time and again the core reason why businesses and organizations become Cyber Essentials certified is that more and more suppliers are asking for organizations to have Cyber Essentials certification. But then we have the free cyber liability insurance. The with that is £25,000 liability insurance and 24/7-hour instant management if you are the victim of a cyber attack. That was a quick run through of those control mechanisms. What I hope I've got across to delegates on the call on the webinar this morning is that we can build our cybersecurity posture. We haven't got to do everything at once. We can start small, implement basic controls and move upwards. Cybersecurity can be a challenge and it can be difficult, but that doesn't mean that we can't start that journey and start working on that behavioral change. There's a huge wealth of information out there, but if we just look at these key controls, these key security mechanisms, we can really bolster our cybersecurity at a professional level, but in our personal lives as well. That's everything from me. Huge thank you to everybody who's joined us this morning. Ross, big thank you for inviting us along. It's been a real pleasure. We've just got a few minutes for questions, so I'm happy to take those.
Okay, Chris, thanks very much indeed. The first question comes from Jean, and I'll perhaps answer it myself. And it was in relation to whether we're going to be published or whether you can get access to the rest of the webinars. Just to reiterate, I will be publishing all of the webinars, so all 4 of them. I'll be putting on the blog page over the next 3 or 4 days. So hopefully all operational by Tuesday of next week. So that's the first one. The second question is from Simon. And Chris, I don't know whether you will be able to answer this one, but it relates to Apple Password Manager. And her question was, is using the strong password feature offered by Apple Password Manager a good idea or not?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question. I think that's something we've seen time and again. The NCSC posture is to use 3 random words when it comes to our password protection. The reason we use 3 random words is that it's something that we can control and use, and there is less likely to be compromised in the event of a cyber breach. Apple and many password managers do offer that service, and it is acceptable to use auto-generated passwords. The only suggestion, the only recommendation is that if you are using auto-generated passwords, is that you make sure that your account that stores all those passwords is safe and secure. What happens when we use auto-generated passwords is that when those passwords are stored within our accounts or our browser, if that account is compromised, then cyber criminals are able to gain access to those passwords.
Okay, thanks, Chris. And probably last question that we've got time for, again from Simon. What advice would you give to small businesses with a BYOD model and limited financial capability to hire a cybersecurity specialist? Well, if I can answer that one, certainly join the Southwest Cyber Resilience Centre, Simon. But Chris, over to you.
Yeah, definitely, and I think it's something that many organisations are struggling with. What I'll do, Simon, is I'll just post a link to our guidance on Bring Your Own Device. It's a great guidance piece which helps you set out your BYOD policy and how you can implement those controls. But again, all the steps in there are free of charge. NCSC isn't recommended that you hire a cybersecurity specialist to implement those. All the NCSC guidance is free at the point of use, so have a read there. But my biggest advice is make sure that staff are following the Cyberware Campaign controls. Make sure that we're using strong passwords and that we're not using weak passwords. Cyber criminals are fantastic at leveraging poor password hygiene, so let's make sure that we're making sure that all our accounts are as secure as possible.
Brilliant, excellent advice as always, Chris. And I think that's probably all we have time for this morning. Thank you so much, and thank you so much for everybody who's joined us over the last 3 or 4 weeks. I hope you found it useful. And as I say, you can find, for reference purposes, the whole series on our website. Brief look forward is our next webinar will be on Wednesday, the 26th of May, between 12 and 1. And it will be, surprisingly enough, about Cyber Essentials, and that's in conjunction with Computer World of Bristol. So we'll be advertising that nearer the date. But certainly, if you're interested, clearly it ties in with what Chris was talking about this morning. We'll take you through the Cyber Essentials. So thanks very much indeed.